up, Anuj? It's Guys here. Hopefully everyone is slowly getting through April. We are almost at summer, so keep going. We're almost in the promised land that is summer, and the promised land that we've all waited for so long. A semi-normal summer 2021, where we can play bangers out of our cars, and hopefully I get my license. Anyway, you guys aren't here for my commentary on summer or my dumb wisecracks and references, but y'all are here for the podcast, so here it is. This episode is actually super cool, and I'm honored to bring on David Madden for episode 19. David, for those of you that don't know, is a Jeopardy champion who holds the fourth longest win streak in the show's history, and is one of the leaders in the amount of money won as well. In addition, he is now the head of international academic competitions across the world. The essential question, as you may have guessed, is how does one become a Jeopardy champion? On this episode, you're going to get to see my nerdy side come out, and the inner Quiz Bowl nerd of this episode, me, comes out. With David, we talk a lot about his background and how he got into trivia and Quiz Bowl, and then talk about the show and all the various elements that come with being on Jeopardy. And besides the Jeopardy stuff, we talk about the various responsibilities David has running a nonprofit and business that's located throughout the world, and how he wants everyone to eventually have access to play in academic competitions one day. Overall, this was a super fun episode to make, and I hope you guys enjoy David telling me all about his different life experiences and crazy things that he's done in the Quiz Bowl world, and I can only hope that it was as fun for you guys as it was for me. So without further ado, cue it up. Coming to you live from my parents' house, we got episode 19 of the Essential Question podcast, and today I'm honored to bring on one of Quiz Bowl's legends and Jeopardy champion himself, David Madden. How's it going?
It's going great. Beautiful day up here in Burlington, Vermont at IAC World Headquarters. So, yeah, we don't get many of these in April here in Vermont. So I'm taking full advantage.
You were telling me that there was 4 inches of snow right before. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, literally 3 days ago we had 4 inches of snow. Maybe it was even 2 days ago. Yeah, it's just 2 days ago. So I mean, it's nuts. But last year I drove through a blizzard up here in Vermont on May 11th. So
wow.
That's the downside. The upside is that by July it's absolutely gorgeous, and my wife and I are big skiers, so we love it here. We moved here for a reason.
It works out. You get the snow and then you get the nice summer. But here in California, it's been 77 degrees pretty much this whole week, so can't complain about that either.
Can't complain there either. No.
Yeah. So why don't you go ahead and, for the people that don't know you, give kind of a 2-sentence summary as to who you are and what you're up to right now.
Oh God, 2 sentences, huh? And there I just used one of them. Wait, now I've used
the summary. Just give them the summary.
All right. So my name is David Madden. I'm originally from Ridgewood, New Jersey. I played Quiz Bowl in high school for 4 years and just loved every minute of it. Played a little bit of Quiz Bowl in college, and then had the good fortune to try out for Jeopardy with another of Quiz Bowl's legends, Jeff Hoppus, and ended up working out pretty well for me. And with the winnings from the show, I back in 2010 set up. At first, it was just a little history quiz tournament, Tri-State History Bowl at my former high school, just for fun. Didn't have any real plan behind it, but we had 150 kids come in for that. And a week later, I set up the National History BN Bowl officially. And that was now, close to 11 years ago. And we just have never looked back. We're active now with international academic competitions. That's our umbrella organization in something like 35 countries. We just had our first team compete from Uzbekistan. They just won an international online tournament, so it continues to grow day by day.
So were you always kind of into this academic trivia, or was it kind of an interest that developed in high school? How did it come to be?
Honestly, it's sort of going back as far as I can remember. I was just kind of interested in all sorts of things. Learned to read at age 2 or so, and then by age 3 I was just obsessed with a map puzzle of the 50 states. So I had the capitals memorized by the time I was like 3.5, and just loved it. And to this day, I can stare at maps for like just hours on end and just be entranced. And so geography, I think, was my first love. But
Yeah.
I've always been interested in just everything from zoology to weather to genealogy is actually a big hobby of mine. To, all sorts of history and literature, and kind of anything that doesn't involve higher math, I would say.
I'm the same way. So I could relate to you on that front. And I don't know. I feel like having niche interests is so cool. Just things that like people don't really, talk about, and just like really delving deep into something that's just, so narrow is just
Yeah,
really cool.
and it's always fun because I never know where my next random interest is going to come from. Like last
Yeah.
year, and I know I wasn't the only one in this position, but obviously with nowhere really to travel to, I just got really into gardening and spent like 4 or 5 hours each day outside just in the garden. And I turned our house into the local pesto factory, and I made like 25 jars of pesto for everybody in
Ooh,
the neighborhood. So,
that sounds great.
I don't know, but I'm never bored ever, and I always have lots of projects and interests to be
Yeah.
working on and keeping me busy.
Yeah. I mean, and one of those projects, speaking of which, was, Jeopardy, I guess, way back in the day. So like when did you first kind of discover Jeopardy being like a thing?
Um, this may be heresy, but I actually remember watching Wheel of Fortune long before Jeopardy. Maybe that was just because my parents were more into Wheel of Fortune. I don't know
Yeah.
what that says, but by middle school, I was watching Jeopardy pretty consistently, and noticed that I was getting a fair amount of the questions, especially in geography and history.
Hmm.
And then in freshman year of high school, I just had the good fortune that my school had a quiz bowl team, and I tried out for all sorts of academic competitions. I did debate, I did Model UN. Some of these stuck with me, and I like doing it. I did Model UN, honestly, all 4 years of high school, 4 years in college, and 1 year of grad school too. But quiz bowl was really my first and biggest love there. And just
Yeah.
from they put me as a freshman on the varsity team, and I was sort of off to the races with it.
Hmm.
And we won a fluke tournament the end of my sophomore year, where sort of it was the reverse of Murphy's Law, where we got every break that we could have gotten, and ended up winning 280 to 275 in the final match. And because I'm from Jersey, back in the 90s, buzzer tournaments were pretty infrequent in New Jersey, and we played this weird non-buzzer, sort of like Jeopardy style format, where there'd
Yeah.
be like a question grid and categories, and they'd have point values, and you just collaborate as a team of 4 players, and then whoever if you got the points, then it went over to the other team. But if you missed the question, then the other team had a chance to steal the points.
Hmm.
Kind of boring in retrospect compared to
Yeah.
other competitions, but we loved it at the time.
Yeah.
And so at the end of this tournament, that round was the first ever round that I played on a buzzer. And then that just brought things to a whole new dimension. And I studied my brains out junior year or senior year. I know lots of quiz bowlers can relate to
Yeah.
that feeling of kind of getting religion with it, and then just going to town on studying and prepping and playing. So yeah, I mean, it was kind of funny because then I was largely out of the quiz bowl loop for almost a solid 10 years or so, from about the year 2000, 2001 until I came back in 2010. And I did some reading at NAQT tournaments and a couple
Hmm.
of other things in the meantime. But I think actually having that little break sort of gave me a broader perspective. And when I sort of rediscovered Quiz Bowl, I was able to take some of the experiences I had had and really run with it.
Yeah. So like before we really get into it, why don't you go ahead and kind of describe like what academic competitions are to someone who has like no clue what they are? So like just kind of give them the broad context.
Sure. So do you mean international academic competitions, like what
Just
our
like,
organization
like
does?
I mean, you could kind of describe like the differences between like Quiz Bowl and History
Yeah,
Bowl,
sure.
all that stuff.
So, academic competitions, I would start by saying, are a tremendous way to complement the learning that students do in the classroom. And they set the students who compete in them up for a lifetime of advantages and curiosity and great preparation, not only for university studies, but for the rest of your life to come. One great little vignette from that is that the day I met my wife, we would in a club in Vienna, Austria, and dancing to Beatles music. And I saw her and said, "Oh, where are you from?" And she said, "France." And I was like, "Well, where in France?" And she, "Oh, the eastern part." I was like, "Oh, so you mean like Alsace?" And she's like, "Oh yeah, you've heard of Alsace?" I'm
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, of course I've heard of Alsace. Alsace-Lorraine and Strasbourg." And as an American being abroad, it's always a double-edged sword because everybody expects like nothing from you, but if you have
Yeah.
even just a little bit of knowledge, it like the doors open even wider.
Hmm.
So hey, you never know when this stuff's going to come in handy.
There you go.
And that's just one example of many, many, many that I guess I can trace back to my quiz bowl days. So that may be a little bit niche, but it's such a wonderful way to enrich what just beyond classroom learning. And I'd go so far as to say it's one of the real strengths of the American education system. We do in the United States a lot more academic competitions than most countries' students do. And I think that really gives students in the US sort of a different sort of focus. And I'd say, even go so far as to say that's sort of more tied into our entrepreneurial spirit in the fact that in the USA, new ideas often get an audience a little bit more quickly than they do abroad. That is one of our country's strengths. And then to take academic competitions from the USA to the world and see that, if we approach teachers and students and families in the right way, this can be of great benefit to their kids too. And that's really one of the most rewarding things about the work we've been doing.
For sure. I mean, you've just like I've seen like the growth with like History Bowl. Like I know you guys started back in 2010, but like now it's international and like you were saying earlier, like 35 different countries. It's just I feel like it's academic competitions and like the idea of it is just growing throughout the world now, which is crazy to see. And hopefully it just continues and it becomes like
Oh, it will. Yeah. I
yeah,
mean, one thing that I am not shy about saying is that the growth and expansion of academic competitions to all students all over the world is in our DNA. It's not that we want to just build this out until every school in the USA is playing Quiz Bowl, although we're going to do our part for that too.
hmm
We have this crazy vision that everybody in the world can be benefiting from this. Even if they don't have a power outlet to plug a buzzer system into, they can play slap bowl or clap bowl.
right.
And we've been at this for 10 years. We've sort of taken the year of COVID as a bit of a chance to recharge our batteries a little bit and build some foundations for some new projects. But
hmm
ultimately, we're never going to stop. IC is going to outlive me. I'm
Yeah.
totally convinced of that. I want it to. And ultimately, yeah, we're never going to stop until like literally the Tuareg are playing the Dogon in the History Bowl of Northern Mali.
That's
I mean,
amazing.
and even then, we'll trudge on to I don't know the Twa people in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. I mean,
Right.
whatever.
Right.
It's never going to stop. The world's too
Everywhere.
big. Yeah.
Yeah. So back to like what we were talking about earlier. So like in college, you said you like continued to play Quiz Bowl for a little bit. So like, what would you say like the main differences from like the main differences are from like high school and college Quiz Bowl to like Jeopardy?
There's obviously a lot of overlap in terms of the question canon. And it's no accident that the vast majority of the really successful players who have gone on Jeopardy over the years, Ken Jennings, Brad Rutter, Matt Jackson,
Right.
Larissa Kelly, myself, and just the list goes on and on. got their start playing Quiz Bowl. Because at a certain point, it's almost like, why on earth would anybody have this sort of knowledge background?
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, and it's funny because, you know, with the possible exception of James Holzhauer, and I'd say even in his case, he just put a ton of effort and prep into what he did as well, that there really aren't, you know, sort of geniuses in this regard. It's just a lot of smart people who really found an interest in it and put in a lot of effort and a lot of study time so that all that knowledge seeped into our long-term memories. And that's one of the beauties of Quiz Bowl, is that that's completely different from the way that knowledge is usually approached in school. I mean, at best, you know, you're tested on a very specific sort of thing. Maybe at the end of the year, you do an AP exam. In rare cases, maybe you'll be asked a year or two later to do an SAT2 or something like that in the subject. But our system really doesn't emphasize long-term retention of knowledge. And that's, I think, something that almost, you know, is true not only everywhere, but it's very hard to sort of make that a part of an education system. Skills obviously scaffold on each other, but you know, let's face it, if you're studying American history and then you do a Chinese history course, there's not honestly usually all that much overlap.
Mm-hmm.
It, you know, it helps, but on the whole, the way that our minds work is that we just have so much to focus on in the here and now that very little of that sort of typically sticks with us. I was very good at Latin back in high school, but you know, I've had very little opportunity to, or very little need to make use of it in the intervening 20 years. So I still remember, you know, some basic conjugations and declensions and things like that, but pretty much almost all of the vocabulary knowledge has left me. And I would need a lot of help to, you know, go back to where my skills were even junior of high school. But you know, Quiz Bowl is so great because to get good at it, you just get those skills, get that knowledge into your long-term, and then it stays there, and it can stay there for life. And you know, I got A pluses in Latin. I was the captain of my school's Quiz Bowl team. I remember like 1% of what I learned in Latin class, maybe. I still to this day probably retain over 90% of what I learned in high school for studying for Quiz Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the key difference. And there's really, no matter how smart you are, there's almost no real reason why anybody who's not playing Quiz Bowl is going to necessarily really have that knowledge base or have any real reason to have. Even if you're very well read and very well traveled, it's just hard to, you know, come up with all that. So yeah, it's not exclusive to Quiz Bowlers. There's a whole trivia community that really identifies as such, which is more focused on sort of people who are older than college age, who like going to pub quizzes and trivia championships and things like that. But and obviously there's overlap there too. But yeah, I mean, Quiz Bowl does really impact success on Jeopardy. There's just no way around it.
Yeah.
The flip side of that, though, is that Jeopardy tests all sorts of other skill sets, especially pop culture.
Yes.
Which is often a tricky part for academic specialists from the world of Quiz Bowl. And there's also, you know, any number of kind of like tricky wordplay clues and
I was going to ask you about those.
Things that aren't necessarily really even trivia focused, but or Quiz Bowl focused at all, but are just largely how quickly can you think on your feet, how quickly can you mentally manipulate words or think laterally, and the absolute champion of that is Ken Jennings. And Ken played Quiz Bowl. He was a good Quiz Bowl player, but nothing really too special. But he is absolutely the best player I've ever seen at just, he can anagram like 2 13-letter words, in 3 seconds. And that's like something that you just don't need for Quiz Bowl, period. But like on Jeopardy, that's sort of stuff can actually be real helpful.
Yeah. No, for Jeopardy, it's like those word categories. Whenever I see them, I'm just like, if I was playing, I'd just completely avoid them. Still listening. David had a parakeet situation, so but now he's back. The parakeet has been placed in its proper place.
Successfully resolved.
There we go. Um, so let's think about what we were talking about. I totally forgot. But we could go back to like, what were you?
Jeopardy.
Yeah. So what were you? Oh, and before I forget, the essential question for this episode is, how does one become a Jeopardy champion? So
Oh,
David can obviously help us answer that question, and he has been so far. So, but I'll include that in the intro. So
get
none of
really
you
good at Quiz Bowl. That's sort of the best thing you can do if you're
yeah.
between 10 and 18 and listening to this.
Yeah, there you go. So I presume that like there was, I mean, you were talking about kind of how you took a little break between Quiz Bowl and like your academic competition career before you went on Jeopardy. So like, what was your prep process
Yeah,
like when you knew like, okay, I'm gonna go back?
sure. So just to fill in a little more background here, when I was 16 and then just in total thrall to Quiz Bowl, I remember thinking that, a good age to go on Jeopardy would be 23. I specifically knew that then, as now, is still the case, that if you go on teen tournament, I think even Kids Week, or certainly the college championships, you cannot go on again on the regular show.
Okay.
And you can not only win more money on the regular show, but typically the questions are going to be harder on the regular show, which plays well to a Quiz Bowl player, or at least a Quiz Bowl player who's able to grasp a bit of the pop culture canon
Mm-hmm.
and things like that. But also the competition in the teen tournament and the college championships is also it's often really strong because it's a lot of people who play Quiz Bowl.
Yeah.
Your odds of facing a really good Quiz Bowler in the teen tournament or college championships are going to be much higher than like the regular show.
Right.
That's not to say they're not out there. Victoria Gross, who I lost to in my last episode, she played Quiz Bowl and was very good at it. So but generally speaking, you're going to come up against fewer players who sort of have your overlapping skill set.
Mm-hmm.
So that was something that I noticed right away. And when I actually went on the show, I was 23. So if like only everything in life worked out that well.
Yeah.
But yeah, so interestingly, so I was at Princeton as an undergrad, and Jeff Hoppus, who's a good friend of mine, was 1 year ahead of me. And Jeff is, without doubt, the best geography player ever, and he's in the conversation up there for best history player ever too.
Mm-hmm.
And geography and history were my strengths, and being 1 year behind him, I was largely superfluous, at least in terms of helping Princeton's A team. So I kind of realized that, and just never totally faded away, but just was doing less and less with Quiz Bowl, as I think a lot of players do when they get into college and there are other opportunities. And in college, I realized making some money wouldn't be a bad idea. Of all things, I started driving for the campus food delivery agency. This is back way before DoorDash and Uber Eats. And it was pretty good money. It was like 25 an hour back in like the year 2000, because tips were mostly how kids would pay us, and they would often put them on their parents' credit cards. But that aside, I was the assistant manager of the business my junior year, and was the manager of the business my senior year. So I worked my way up through the ranks. So this is what they call a student agency. So the business itself is owned by the university, but they pass it down year on year to give students a chance to test their hand at being an entrepreneur without getting too deep in, over your head. You effectively have the university's bank account backing you up. So not that you have access to billions of dollars in capital, but they're not going to let you go under. So that was nice, and it really showed me I really like being an entrepreneur and being my own boss and taking ideas and putting them into practice, even if they were as like non-intellectual as, oh, maybe we should expand our delivery to the graduate school, or we should bring in the local Mexican restaurant to go along with the Chinese restaurant and the pizzeria. It was basic stuff like that, but put a lot of time and effort into it. And after I had graduated, I had a good amount of money saved up, and I had a Rotary scholarship to go study international relations in Berlin, and was doing a 2-year master's program over there. And um, for anybody who's listening to this, Berlin is absolutely one of the best cities in the world to be in when you're in your 20s, and it's relatively affordable. It's just it's like sort of heaven on earth if you're a student and just looking to indulge yourself in culture, fun of all sorts. It's great, and didn't hurt that I spoke German too.
Yeah.
Um, but I had some money saved up, as I said, and I went and actually paid Jeff Hoppus a visit out in California during my spring break. And Jeff and I share the hobby of bird watching, actually. So that's um, been something that we've enjoyed together for decades now, believe it or not.
Hmm.
And Jeff married his and our fellow teammate Larissa Kelly right out of college as well. Um, so I went out and stayed with Jeff and Larissa for a few days, and then we went birding all over California. And it was only after I had booked the tickets out to California from Berlin that I thought, hey, when we go around California, we're not going to be too far from LA. Maybe we can try it for Jeopardy. And I called up the show. This is before the online tryouts
Yeah.
existed. And I said, hey, we're going to be out in the LA area in May of 2004. And we're wondering if you have any, tryouts going on that day. And Jeff was teaching at Berkeley as well.
Hmm.
And because of his teaching schedule, the only days that would have worked were May 12th, 13th, and 14th, or something like that. And then the show said, yeah, we're doing tryouts one day. It's May 13th. Boom.
Meant to
Perfect luck.
be.
Yeah. And so we went around California. I ordered, tons of trivia books off of Amazon, and we just quizzed each other, again, largely on stuff like food and old movies and
Right.
TV shows and stuff like that. Because, Jeff's academic base was, obviously even much better than mine. But
Hmm.
so we were pretty cool with that. But, we still had to brush up on the other stuff. And so drove all over California, saw a lot of birds, quizzed each other a lot, and then tried out for the show. Both passed the test. Jeff then got called on later in the year to go up against Ken Jennings because somebody had dropped out. Surprise, surprise. And he was in California, so it was easy enough for Jeff to go down on literally
Yeah.
something like 24 hours notice. And then thank God by the time Ken had finally lost, I got the call a couple months later. But
Okay.
in terms of prepping for it, one big thing I did was that, and this was before I was aware of what they call the Jeopardy archive. So
Hmm.
j-archive.com. That's pretty much the only site you need to prep for the show, because it's got tens of thousands of past Jeopardy clues, and you can search through them. So you can pull up all the clues on, if you've sort of heard of, Robert De Niro, for example, being a big name actor, but, as a quiz bowler, maybe you're not too much aware of what he's been in beyond that. And this is how a lot of my pop culture studying works. Like, I
Right.
know I've heard the name, but I don't really know what they did. So I did a lot of, just Wikipedia studying for that. But really, J-Archive is much more efficient because you can just
Hmm.
type in Robert De Niro and you can see all the clues that he's been referenced in. And you can say, oh, okay, so he was in, Raging Bull. That was one of his big, movies. Oh, he was in, in the Godfather series. He was
Right.
Analyze This and Meet the Parents, and
Hmm.
just stuff like that. And so, okay, I've heard of these. I've seen a few of these movies. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. So I've got a better sense. And that was largely, how I handled the pop culture stuff. I've actually been a big sports fan my whole life,
Okay.
and
What are your teams?
um, uh, the New York Yankees. Sorry, America.
Oh
Um,
man.
but also, my dad went to Boston College, so I root for BC football.
Okay.
And I'm a big sort of Olympic sports fan. I'm an avid skier, so I follow the international skiing circuit
Nice.
quite a bit. that's not going to help me on Jeopardy too much.
Yeah,
But yeah, I've got a pretty good awareness of football, basketball, the
that's
usual
good.
stuff.
Yeah.
And then I'm a huge classic rock fan, and Jeopardy asks a disproportionate number of questions on
Yes. Yeah.
so
I do.
I know very little about contemporary music beyond what I just sort of pick up through osmosis. But that's very infrequently asked about on at least on sort of like the adult version of Jeopardy.
Hmm.
um, they will throw clues like that more into the teen tournament or the college championships, which is yet another reason why I was going to shy away from those. But if they're asking about the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, or stuff like that, I know that stuff pretty well. So that's
Yeah.
honestly not that bad for me. It's movies and above all TV. Because
Hmm.
I barely watch TV other than uh, game shows and Pawn Stars and the Weather Channel.
Yeah.
Those are sort of my my three
That's fair.
things. But yeah, so in terms of the show and prepping, I was living in Berlin, as I said, and I would I've always been a bit of a night owl, so I would call up my parents at 1 in the morning, and they would put the phone next to the TV because it was
Oh,
7 in the morning on the
yeah.
East Coast. And I hadn't told my parents that I was trying out
Yeah, I
for
was gonna
Jeopardy.
ask you. Like,
No,
yeah.
they were completely in the dark, and and so they I just called them up one day and said, hey, mom, hey, dad, can you put the phone next to the TV? I just want to listen to Jeopardy. And they're like, David, it's 1 in the morning, and you're in Berlin. Like, don't you have something better to do? Like, um, you know, either go sleep or go party or something. No,
Yeah.
no, I want to listen to Jeopardy. All right, fine. And this, by this point in my life, was sort of almost normal behavior for me with my parents. So, so fine. They put it next to the TV, and I sat there with my laptop, and a grid I had made for myself. And again, you can now do all of this on J Archive very
Right.
easily, but not knowing about it at the time, I just went in and tracked the location of every single daily double. I tracked not only what questions I was getting right that nobody on the show was getting right, but
Hmm.
also what I was getting right because of what I had studied. And it got to the point where it was usually about 2 questions in each show that I was picking up because of the studying that I had done.
Right.
Um, so and hey, that could make all the difference. Who
Yeah.
knows? So uh, you know, basically my thought process going in was that it's same thing with a lot of what I do in life. It's that like this may not work. There are all sorts of reasons. I can fall flat on my face, even if I kind of do everything right. But I want to do what I can to maximize my ability to succeed with this, and then
Hmm.
let the chips fall where they may. Right?
Yeah.
So I knew that if I went on the show and didn't win, um, okay, yeah, Dems the breaks. There are so many really good Quiz Bowl players, and this is part of the how fickle fate can be. People who are amazing at Quiz Bowl and trivia, Jerry Vinokurov, Scott Blish. The list is on and on and on of people who are really quite better than me at Quiz Bowl, but just ran up against bad luck, or in Scott's case, he had the misfortune to go up against Alex Jacob, who is
Hmm.
one of the best players in Jeopardy history, and who's a $1 million winning poker player. I mean, he's got a brain operating on levels that I can't begin to
Yeah.
compete with. So, you know, them's the breaks, right? But I wanted to put myself in a position where, okay, at least I felt I'd given it a good shot,
You were as
and
best prepared as possible, right?
yeah, right.
Yeah.
And like I think if just about everybody who goes on the show, my goal was to win one episode and not finish in the red. So
Yeah.
yeah, and then after the first, I won the first show. I mean, I honestly didn't play that well. I missed a couple questions because I just forgot what the category was.
Yeah.
And stupid things like that.
Hmm.
But it was just about the most nervous I've ever been in my life.
Yeah.
That's true for
Right.
I think a lot of people. But having got that first win under my belt, all the pressure, and I really mean like all the pressure was off.
Hmm.
And at that point, I just had fun. And I mean,
Yeah.
it was like, I've accomplished what I wanted to do. It's a life goal. Oh my God, how lucky, how fortunate. And now I can just sort of,
Be
almost
free.
relax a little
Yeah.
bit and let my mind and my quiz bowl knowledge just do the
Hmm.
work.
Yeah.
And I just got into this groove. One thing I'll say is that in all the shows that I taped, um, it would the farthest thing from my mind was that this was going to be televised and watched by millions of people.
Right.
Um, I was very good at just it wasn't even like blocking it out from my mind so much as just it was like kind of a whatever thing, and it that didn't phase me in the slightest. It was
Hmm.
kind of almost odd looking back at it. Um, but yeah, I mean, maybe that's just again because like after the first game, it was just they tape 5 shows a day, so you're right back out there. You almost don't have time to think too
Oh, so
much.
they go 5 times a day? Like
Yeah,
you're like
and they
boom,
make you
boom,
change
boom.
your they make you change your clothes, preserve the illusion. Um, and Trebek or now rest in peace. The
Yeah.
would be worthy successors are coming on saying on yesterday's show, but really
Yeah.
yesterday was like 45 minutes ago because once you run through all the paperwork and the practice games and everything, then it's rapid fire and you literally have like 15 minutes between each game.
Right.
You just change your clothes, do a makeup touch up, and then you're right back out there. And
Hmm.
everybody else who's waiting to go up against you is sitting in the audience and getting psyched out. Uh, and this is just when if as I said, it just becomes fun because
Yeah.
you're pulling stuff that seems to the average person, even a average really smart person, like why on earth would anybody know this? And it's like this is just basic high school quiz bowl canon. Like these are like things that would be in the giveaways of paragraph length toss-ups,
Hmm.
right? And there was I mean, literature was not my strongest category in high school,
Yeah.
but you know, it not being higher math, I was able to pick up, quite a bit of it. Just again, largely by osmosis, some by some reading I had done. And one point, I just swept a category on Jeopardy about like, books and authors or something like that. And Trebek said, "Boy, you must have done a lot of reading." And I'd read one of the 5 books. I don't think I'd ever opened any of the others. And again, it was just like it's like Tess of the D'Urbervilles. Yeah, of course
Yeah.
that's by Thomas Hardy. It's um, Silas Marner. It's just basic stuff that anybody who's been around the game long enough largely picks up in the back of their mind.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, but I mean, even if you're an avid reader, chances are you're only going to really know this stuff if you've read the book, or at least if you've taken courses on this in college, and maybe even that was a long time ago. And I'm sure there are people out there who are outrageously better read than I am at something like poetry. But are they going to remember who wrote, um, Ode on a Grecian Urn versus Ode to the West Wind, and there's no real reason why, if you're academically studying poetry, that you need to remember that. It's just almost sort of like it is trivia in a sense at that
Hmm.
level. Um, but again, it's also Quiz Bowl 101. And that's where, a solid quiz bowler who's built up the canon in their mind, has been able to retain it, is going to be at such an advantage. And I would say that, when I went on the show, as I said, I was 23, and that was, the ideal age. I still think that's the ideal age
Okay.
because you're coming out of college, you've got such a great now, in addition to the quiz bowl canon that you've got all that you learned in college, all that you learned in high school, sort of fresh in your mind. When you're 23, you often can use the money more than when you're in college, or at least when you're 65 and retired or whatever.
Hmm.
So yeah, I mean, it's I think is a really good age for
Yeah.
any quiz bowler to shoot to go on the show. And yeah, at that point, again, it just became fun. And
Hmm.
all sorts of bizarre stuff that I'd been studying. I studied who the corrupt schoolmaster was in Nicholas Nickleby as Wackford Squeers. I studied that out of a trivia book in the hotel hot tub the night before one of my tapings, and it comes up as a daily double the next day.
Yeah.
And I just say often, oh yeah, I just studied that yesterday. What is Nicholas Nickleby? And like Trebek looks at me as if I'm from
Bro,
Mars.
what?
And yeah, like
Yeah.
you're doing what? It's like, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And to be fair, that's not that uncommon. Fantastic read if you can get your hands on the book is Prisoner of Trebekistan by my friend Bob Harris, who's had a very interesting, colorful career as a stand-up comedian. He's written for Buffy the Vampire Slayer. He has a new project in the works in Hollywood that's coming out with some big names. So Bob's just the man. And he wrote this book, Prisoner of Trebekistan, about how studying for Jeopardy really opened his eyes to the world, and how he became a inveterate traveler after it, because now, having learned the capitals and the flags and the currencies, you want to get out there and see the countries and meet people and all that. And it's a great memoir, and it's Jeopardy focused. I don't think Bob played Quiz Bowl, unlike a lot of other top players, but he certainly sort of had the same mentality, I think, in an approach to knowledge and just being curious and open, that a ton of quiz bowlers also have. So,
Right.
yeah, I think we could all relate to the book. Prisoner of Trebekistan by Bob Harris. Amazon usually has a copy or two available. Can't recommend it enough.
Yeah. You heard it here first, guys. Got to go check that out. So after you like win a couple, because you said you were really nervous after your first match, and then you really freed up after the next few.
Yeah.
Like, did you ever worry like, oh my gosh, the confidence is really getting to my head? Like, how did you keep yourself grounded and just continue to win out matches?
It's too much fun. It was really just too much fun. I mean, you're just living the dream. You're out there. You're cracking jokes with Trebek. You're just in your zone. I mean, it's just if you look at the psychological concept known as flow, it was just that. I mean, it was just all right. Here's Mediterranean geography. This is another hanging breaking ball that I'm going to smash out of the park, and just stuff like that. And meanwhile, everybody else is watching you from the audience, and and this was the same thing with Ken Jennings and Holzhauer. I'm sure too, is that people were had lost half the game by the time they got up to the podium. They were just like, oh my god, all the days to come on Jeopardy, I had to go up against this guy,
Right.
and then they're like, and Jeopardy tells you to start at the top of the category and work your way down. Trebek was really very much into that. The show has evolved over the years, and that's less common and less common.
Yeah.
But they still like it for that. I think mostly because the show's how should we put this gently, older demographics find it maybe a little easier to follow that way. But I'm jumping all over the board, and the other players have rarely seen the game played this way, and it's throwing them off a little bit.
Yeah.
And then I was very conservative with the daily doubles. I think the only record I have over Jennings and Holzhauer, at least on the show itself. There's one other record I can mention in a sec, but my daily double conversion was like absolutely crazy. Just in all my games of Jeopardy, I think I've selected 47 daily doubles and have gotten 45 of them right.
Wow.
And granted, I mean, I was often looking for them in categories I was good at, so it should be somewhat higher than the statistical norm. But yeah, I mean, I played to find those daily doubles, wager conservatively, and this just shut it down. And that was, I think, very frustrating for the other players, because they by and large, they were not going to beat me on the knowledge, and so they needed the luck. If I took the luck away from them, then I was going to be in really good shape. And predictably, in the game I lost, Victoria, who was a very good quiz bowler in her own right, found the daily doubles and unlike a lot of players, she went all in on them,
Right.
uh, and she won the game fair and square. She beat me actually by quite a bit, and no regrets. And I think I kind of like it that way.
Mhm.
There's nothing at all I can look back at that game and say, "Oh, if only I had." No, no,
Right.
she won easily,
She was just the better
and
player.
exactly in that
Yeah.
game,
Yeah. In that
right?
game. Yeah.
And that can be the case, for anybody, right? In any particular game, if you get the luck, you get the categories.
Hmm.
Hey, you can pull off an upset, and
Yeah.
like so much else in competitions, that's one of the things that makes it compelling to watch, of course.
Yeah. So you're like, well, so your uh run of 19 matches was back in 2005. So it's been, I can't do math, but it's been it's been like
16 years. Oh my
16
gosh.
years.
Yeah.
I was 5 years old when your run took place, but 16 years it's been since that crazy run. Like, what do you think about in retrospect? Like, have you gone back and watched some of the matches, and like, how do you reflect on it 16 years later?
The where I think I can't imagine Hollywood writing a better script was that um, Jeopardy brought me back for the AllStar Games
Hmm.
in 2019, and I'd been invited actually about 5 years before then to compete in the Battle of the Decades tournament, but I had to decline it because at the time I had um, a relationship for NHBB with one of the guys who works on auditing the show's clues and gameplay.
Oh, yeah.
So at the time, I had to decline that, but enough time had elapsed, and the business relationship was no longer there. By the time I, was invited to the AllStar Games, and they had cleared it with compliance, so it was all
Hmm.
good. And it was just such a flukish thing that I ended up on the same team as Larissa Kelly, my former
Yeah.
Princeton Quizbowl teammate and wife of Jeff Hoppus, and Brad Rutter, who is the third on our team, had been the one who had taught Jeff Hoppus how to use a buzzer because Jeff was a freshman and Brad was a senior when they were both at Manheim Township High School in Pennsylvania. So this, Jeff Hoppus is just the Kevin Bacon of Jeopardy. And the fact that, I got a chance not only to go back on the show 14 years later, but also win a tournament with two people who I was friends with. So I had known
Yeah.
Brad for years before the show. So, I mean, that's just insane. That isn't,
Yeah.
it just, I can't think of a wackier set of coincidences,
Hmm.
you know. So, and at this point, it, I don't expect to go back on the show again. I've done everything I could ever imagine I want to do in, not just Jeopardy, but really game shows in general. And honestly, even before then, what keeps me involved is not my own love of trivia so much as just seeing students all over the world get into what we're doing and
Hmm.
see the lights go on and like gain confidence and learn so much, and the teachers have fun with it and the students are learning. And I'm preaching to the choir on this podcast, but
Right.
uh, that feeling never grows old. I mean, I don't really have much desire to go back and play in open quiz bowl tournaments. Like once a year I'll play maybe like a geography event online or something
Hmm.
like that. I'll go to the occasional pub quiz when pandemics aren't raging, but
Right.
but other than that, really, you know what I love is just going to a tournament no matter where in the world, New Jersey, West Virginia, Nepal, you name it, and it's sort of the same fun no matter where you are. That's one of the wonderful things about it. And I've joked to people any number of times that I will. The thought of retirement for me is absolutely repugnant. I mean, even if I get Alzheimer's or whatever, it'll be in my will to just, uh, push him in his wheelchair out in front of the school entrance where the kids are walking into the tournament, and help him wave at the kids. And they'll be like, "Who's that weirdo?" And they'll be like, "Oh, let me
He's a
tell you a
legend.
story or two." So that's how I envisioned my my 90s. But until then, I'm just never gonna stop. And we thankfully have hit on some pretty good ways of being able to locate schools and find
Hmm.
schools and get schools interested. And it's other than that, it's just the hustle and the thinking on a day-to-day basis of how do we improve what we do, how do we expand what we do,
Right.
what new audiences can we approach, how can we sort of tweak Quiz Bowl to make it fun in a different way. We did just launch our History Olympiad website, and we just announced 2 days ago that that's going to be in Quebec City next summer. So go check it out at historyolympiad.com.
Hmm.
And we've got like 13 different buzzer events going on there. 2 of which are audio competitions, 2 of which are visual competitions. One of which, the Scramble, we give you a very specific topic for just a week in advance, and you have to cram on it. So it'd be something like, I don't know, it's not going to be this now that I'm mentioning it, but like something like the history of Tuvalu or whatever.
Yeah.
And something that nobody really should have any advantage at, and then just go cram. And it's a short tournament, it's just like 50 questions. But see how you can do that, because that's buzzer competition, it's pyramidal questions, but it's a different approach. And this year we're going to even or next year I should say, we're going to even top that. We've got a new competition called the Blitz, and the Blitz is basically at 8 a.m. at breakfast we give you a 30 to 50 page packet of I guess Wikipedia articles, everything fact check, of course, and other references, and say, okay, your topic is going to be the history of fill in the blank, and then that packet of 30 to 50 pages will have everything you need in order to answer all of the different clues in the competition. You have an hour, you basically have like 45 minutes to study the material. Then you take a little quiz just for like a few minutes, just so we can see how you're doing in order to seed you. Then we play one preliminary round. Then you go back, if you've done well on that, study another half hour, and then go play in the finals. And the whole thing start to finish is like 2 hours.
That's fun.
So I've never heard of a Quiz Bowl competition working like that.
Yeah.
But again, it's ultra short-term memory, but it is Quiz Bowl. It's pyramidal questions, it's buzzers, it's good players, it's using your mind. So good luck. But, but it's just so much fun to think of like random stuff like that, and just put a new spin on it.
Right. Yeah, 100%. So I have to ask you, as a Jeopardy nerd myself, as someone who's watched a lot of episodes, you were mentioning earlier that you had the privilege of competing in the AllStar event back in 2019, and you played alongside, I believe, Ken Jennings, and you played with Brad Rutter, as you were mentioning. Obviously, 2 of the best to ever do it. Did you like learn anything from the way that they play the game or they prep? Like, what have you learned from them?
One of the most awesome moments, certainly with Jeopardy, maybe even my life, was just during the practice round of the AllStar Game. And I know that that's sort of like kind of a silly thing, but to be fair, some of us hadn't held the Jeopardy buzzer in over 10 years.
Yeah.
But while people were going through their rotations on that, I at one point was seated in the studio audience. Ken Jennings was directly in the seat to my left. Brad Rutter was directly in the seat to my right. And all 3 of us were doing the click pen motion to precisely, try and get the timing down. And I mean, I was sort of just doing this, like out of a reflex, but really my eyes were looking at Ken and my eyes were looking at Brad. I'm like, how did they do it? Like, oh my God, I have like, the perfect, spy's perspective here.
Yeah.
And, frankly, I couldn't tell anything they were doing differently than what I was doing. So, more power to them. I would not say that I was the best buzzer player ever, but, hey, did well enough. And So that was one really cool memory from it.
Hmm.
But yeah, so it was just a blast. And I prepped quite a bit in terms of going back on the show, but almost true to form, not a single thing that I studied came up in any of the questions that I played. Plenty of what I had studied came up in the questions that other people played.
Yeah.
But where I got so lucky was that the two final Jeopardies that I played, one was on geography and the other was on history. And it was sort of like, oh my God, the sheer luck in this. And especially that, those are my two subjects. Those are the subjects I primarily, am involved with for a living and have been for, years now. And then just there's also this sheer terror in the back of my mind. Like, oh my God, if I miss this in Final Jeopardy, because I can't even blame it on the buzzer
Right.
now.
All the
If
national
if
history
I'm
being in bold. It's gonna be
they're all
out.
gonna think I'm a big fraud. Who's this guy? What does he know? What right does he have to be running this? Thank God I got both of them right.
That's good.
So as far as Trebek goes, I will say that every interaction I had with him, he was a great guy. He cracked a lot of jokes. If you read his memoir that he published just before he passed away, he's got a very salty sense of humor, which never really came across on the show too much. But
Yeah.
the contestants got to see a little bit more of that. So that was pretty cool. I won't share any of his jokes, but
Not suitable for podcast.
it's not suitable for podcasts. But use your imagination, I guess.
Yeah.
So anyway, but um, one memory that I really do have of Trebek is that right before the AllStar Game started airing, Trebek did a sort of like a talk show host evening in New York City, with just a Q&A, like an evening with Alex
Mhm.
Trebek or something like that. And he picked me out of the audience and said, Dave Madden's a really smart guy. And just, oh my God,
I was like, whoa, he
that's
picked
like
me.
the ultimate like ego validation, I
Yeah.
guess. And so that was just really cool. And of course that was just a couple years ago. But yeah, I mean, Trebek was the so humble. I mean, he always said he was the host of the show. He wouldn't say he was the star of the show, but obviously he was. And I think we'll never be able to replace him, but
Mhm.
the show will live on, and I know he would have wanted it that way. One little known fact, at least maybe among the Quiz Bowl community, is that Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune are tremendously lucrative in just the realm of Hollywood and entertainment, because they are, relatively speaking, very cheap to produce. It's way cheaper to tape an episode of a game show than it is, write a whole sitcom and pay your
Right.
actors and things like that. And they can do it so efficiently with over 200 new episodes a year. And the show's format speaks for itself. There'll always be an appetite for quiz shows. It's just one of those things,
Mhm.
across cultures and across generations. And Jeopardy, by packing so much knowledge in such a fun way in a short amount of time. I mean, Merv Griffin just hit the jackpot when he figured all that out. And so even if the ratings are maybe down a little bit, from where they were with Trebek or years ago, just because now there's obviously a lot more to watch than just
Right.
5 TV channels on network TV,
Yeah.
back in the dark ages of the 1980s. Um, so because of that, it may not be as lucrative as it once was, but it's still a very lucrative
Yeah.
property within Hollywood. And I don't think we have to worry about it really going anywhere kind of
Mhm.
ever. I think the show will outlive all of us,
For
as it
sure.
should.
Yes, 100%. Do you still watch the show now? I'm just curious.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, during COVID, I've caught not every episode, but more than not. And now it's great because I've spent a lot of one of my COVID projects has been, getting really into running. So I got a treadmill, put it in front of my TV,
Oh,
and
and
now
just
I
watch
can
the
run.
episodes.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
and we can just save the episode and watch it whenever.
Hmm.
So sometimes I'll just binge watch, 10 episodes in a row,
Yeah.
while I'm running for an hour and a half or something like
They're
that.
quick. They just go.
Yeah,
Like, yeah.
yeah, and it's great because if you're watching like that, you can just breeze through the
Yeah.
commercials and just
Exactly.
and it takes all of like 12 minutes to watch an episode
Hmm.
then and just on the next one. And so
Yeah. Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
been a lot of fun.
And I was just curious, like, what do you think of like Aaron Rodgers and Anderson Cooper now as like the guest host? How do you think they've
I've
done?
actually I've actually really been enjoying it. It's been, it's a one of a kind sort of thing that we're seeing all of these people from all different walks of life come in and try their hand at it. And I
Hmm.
think some have been better picks than others to host it, shall we
Yeah.
say. But it's been very interesting to watch. And I never knew that Aaron Rodgers was such a huge fan of the show.
Yeah.
I
No.
knew he had won Celebrity Jeopardy, but I didn't know that he was like prepping for it like the way he would, the Super Bowl,
Yeah.
which was kind of cool. I'm very interested to see Savannah Guthrie. I like the idea of the show having a woman as a host.
Hmm.
Katie Couric said she's not interested, so kind of interesting
Yeah.
to
I
see.
heard Joe Buck is also.
Yeah, Joe Buck. I mean,
Yeah.
we'll see. We'll
It's
see. I
gonna
think
be
he
so
mentioned.
weird. It's like,
Yeah, it's so
yeah.
weird. And of course, I am very much on signing the LeVar Burton petition.
Yes.
Love to see
That
LeVar
would be amazing.
get a crack at it.
Yeah.
I am smack in the middle of the generation that grew up with reading Rainbow.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, have lots of good memories of
For sure.
of you know books from the mid 1980s
Yeah.
and LeVar. Good times.
Yeah. And we'll end on this note. And this last question. I just want to talk a little bit about James Holzhauer, kind of the newer school Jeopardy player.
Yep.
What did you think of his like new school strategy and how he was just like risking it all and playing the game in a very risky way and format
Well,
compared
look, the guy is a professional sports bettor, so
yeah.
and he brings a kind of a absurd knowledge base to the show. So
Mhm.
he could pull that off. I couldn't have. I did well in the show, but he just, sort of went as a machine across the categories. And for me, that wouldn't have been the smart play, because for me, it would have made more sense to just, keep looking for the daily doubles and sticking to the categories that I was
Right.
best in, and making sure that all those clues got played. And so, yeah, I mean, more power to Holzhauer, but I don't think that the way he played is going to catch on too much, just because I don't think almost anybody else is capable of it.
Yeah.
On the other hand, the notion of starting at the bottom of the categories, looking for the daily doubles actively, taking the preparation for it very seriously. I mean, all of this is stuff that I think was much rarer back in the 80s and 90s, and
Hmm.
now it's kind of become just the way you do this.
Right.
And I think, and think about like baseball and Moneyball, and even Quiz Bowl. I mean, Quiz Bowl these days is way more systematic, and that's the way it should be. I mean, I love seeing the fact that today's top quiz bowlers are so much better than the top quiz bowlers like myself were back in the 90s. You hear so much about kids these days and standards going downhill and crap like that. And it's such a refresher to see, even in just the world of Quiz Bowl, how the bar gets raised every year. That everybody, it's a rising tide that's lifting all boats.
Yeah.
And particularly as pyramidal Quiz Bowl grows, and we're trying to do what we can, with IAC to bring it, to all corners of the world.
Hmm.
And that's the way that people are going to benefit more and more from it. And that's a good thing.
Yeah.
But I think Holzhauer was, certainly a little unique in that regard.
Hmm.
I do kind of like the more aggressive betting, though. It does make it overall more fun to watch.
Yeah.
But
And
again,
yeah.
most people aren't going to be in a position where they, can wager $30,000 on a
Right.
final Jeopardy, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think what's cool about James is that he was kind of one of those players that he's like he played in like the age of social media and the internet, and so
Yeah,
he was just all over like ESPN, plastered his name everywhere, like
yeah.
all over
I
Twitter,
I
right?
basically, my run in 2005 basically preceded the era of social media by about
Exactly.
2 years or three
Yeah.
years. So I really didn't have any of that other than some, comments on some, rather old school internet bulletin boards, which was really fine with me.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, it was just, fun experience of a
Yeah.
lifetime. And, hey, to anybody listening, obviously go for it.
Mhm.
Nothing to lose. You can, hey, maybe do real well out of it.
Yeah.
But even just beyond Jeopardy, bear in mind that there are all sorts of other trivia competitions for adults. That's a whole separate side of things.
Mhm.
There are all sorts of ways to stay involved with the game. And I think, like me, a lot of people with whom I work on a day-to-day basis, some of whom were great quiz bowlers, some of whom, were not great quiz bowlers, but just love the game. And for us to be able to stay involved, uh, you know, especially the fact that we're doing this for a living, but even just in general, even if, uh, your ability is just be a reader at NEQT and IAC tournaments, stuff like that. Just staying involved as an adult, uh, as as an oldie or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm turning 40. I'm turning 40 in 2 months, so I guess
You're not that
I'm still
old. Come on now.
but yeah, I mean, it's so rewarding,
Yeah.
and it that will never get old for me. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm at a spot where, I mean, like studying lists of poets and poems, or or periodic table elements. I mean, I just, that doesn't do it for me the way it did in high school, but that's okay. That's it's part of growing up, I guess. But being involved in Quiz Bowl and doing it for a living, it's a dream job. And
Yeah.
yeah, I literally cannot imagine anything that I would
Yeah.
rather be doing with my life. And I'm so fortunate to be able to say that.
Yeah. And then one last really quick question before we get out of here. Uh, who is your Jeopardy goat? Who's the greatest of all time?
Well, Ken won the tournament, didn't he?
There you go.
Sort of hard to argue with that.
Yeah.
I, I'll leave it there.
The tournament did all the talking.
Yeah, I think I would rather play Ken than play Holzhauer.
Mhm.
I think I would have a slightly better chance against Ken. But that's sort of just, I think, more in the way that my knowledge base stacks up.
Right.
And well, I guess I sort of played Ken. I mean, not directly, but
Indirectly through the team stuff. But
yeah,
yeah.
right. But I never faced him directly. I was very happy to let Brad and Larissa handle
Yeah.
that side of things.
Hey, but we gotta see it happen, guys. Let's petition David Madden versus Ken Jennings. We gotta do it. One match.
I do it for charity. I do it for
There we
charity.
go. There we go.
But that's
Jeopardy, you heard it here first. So, well, thank you, David, so much for taking some time out of your day. This was super
sure,
fun. Big Quiz Bowl nerd myself. I'm not anywhere in the realm that you were in high school, but we're still trying out here. So
keep at it. Keep
yes,
at it.
thank you. Hello again. Hope that conversation with David was fun, and that maybe you got some new perspective on what it takes to play the game of Jeopardy and what it's like to compete in academic competitions, not only in high school but throughout life. I personally found it really cool when we talked about how Quiz Bowl is this form of educating differently, and how the information that you learn through it sticks with you for a lot longer. I also just genuinely love and appreciate people who are passionate about what they do and willing to risk it all to continue to spread what they love to others, like what David is kind of doing with IAC and just his overall demeanor when it comes to academic competitions. I mean, you gotta love it. Come on. I've linked the National History Bee and Bowl website as well as the IAC website down below for you guys to go check out. I know a lot of you aren't necessarily in high school, which is mostly what the eligibility level for this stuff is. But go check out what they're doing, and I feel like what they're doing is really cool, and they're definitely spreading a lot of positive messaging throughout the world. So why not go check out what they're doing and see maybe if you can help out and learn more. My social media is linked down below as well, so go check out my Instagram, my Twitter for updates on the podcast, all of that good stuff. Hit me with the follow if you guys like me. So I'll be posting a lot more updates on Instagram and Twitter. I know I've been saying that, but I have to, and it's kind of my way of getting it out there. I'm starting a Facebook and TikTok page, so get ready for that once this bullshit calc stops being a bitch. I will. Calculus has been really annoying this week. But once that's out of the way and midterms are out of the way this week, I'll definitely get to work on starting those social media pages and get more up there for you guys to look at. But in the meantime, go follow Twitter, go follow Instagram, go subscribe to me on YouTube. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, comment down below if you like the episode or not. And follow me on Spotify as well, because we're always looking to expand the fam, and in any way possible, let's go do that. So do all that. If you guys like me, if you guys didn't, I'm sorry. There's nothing I can do. But if you guys did like this episode, feel free to DM me or feel free to comment down below that you liked the episode and what your favorite part was. So yeah. But thank you again so much for listening to this episode with David. This is going to be coming out on Thursday, and the 49ers are picking third in the NFL draft. So I know a lot of you guys are probably very anxious for that. Let's just pray it's not Mac Jones. Please. But it probably will. So I'm keeping my expectations low, but the NFL draft stuff is for another day. Anyway, I hope you all have a fantastic day, and I hope you guys, continue to do whatever it is that you love to do. So that's all I got. Peace.